Welcome to the video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at this quadcopter. Now it appears quite big because we're zoomed in, but if I kind of pop it on my hand you can kind of see how small it actually is. This is a 160mm class quad and it comes pre-built, pretty much ready to go. The only thing you need to add is a battery and a radio receiver, and not only is it ready to fly and comes with the props and stuff, it also comes with the FPV equipment installed as well. So if you want a little flying drone to zoom around indoors in bad weather, or in your back garden, or even outside if there's very little wind, this is an option for you. I need to say a very big thank you to Banggood.com for sending us this to try. In the video what we're going to do is to first of all go through an overview, and I'll go through the features on this little thing. It's amazing what they've managed to cram onto the frame. Then we'll talk about actually building it and wiring it up. Quickly go through how you set up and connect your radio receiver, because you will have to pop one on here. And then finally we'll talk about what it's like to fly, and I'll give you some tips for when you're ordering yours. So the first thing we need to talk about then is the fact that you don't get a radio. The way it comes in the box, if we just pop the box in here, I'll kind of show you what it looks like. That's kind of the box, not really very exciting. It kind of comes pretty much pre-installed with a very basic manual. Doesn't really tell you how to set everything up, but the only thing that we've got here that isn't on the craft, there's a spare set of props. These are really tiny props as well. These are 3 inches, so they're 0302, so they're 3 inches wide, 2-inch pitch, and there's some extra screws as well. And you need these screws to actually connect the props onto the motor. There's 2. Apart from that, everything else that you get on the model is here in front of us. There are 2 versions available, different camera widths. I would always get the one that's about 137 degrees. I think there's a 160 version as well. In my opinion, 160 degrees is way too much for effective FPV. 137's on the high side too. So if you're going to order one, get the 137 degree version. The other thing about this as well is that it does have the FPV transmitter. So the top part of the model is all the electronics. So there's the little flight controller. It's actually a CC3D, but we'll come back to that in a second. It does have the dip switches in here to set your channel that you're going to be using. It appears to be kind of 32 channel capable. I'm using this brilliantly with my Fat Shark Dominator goggles. So that's one of the key tests for me, whether or not it works with Fat Shark stuff, and it does great. The antenna comes with it too. Not a big fan of the antenna. I would suggest that if you're going to fly this thing, get yourself a decent antenna and pop that on. That will help with your reception and range. Although with this thing, it gets really small in the sky really quick. If you're going to try and fly it line of sight, it is literally going to be kind of a back garden kind of machine. It is a 200mW FPV transmitter though, so be aware of that for those places that only 25mW is legal. Some of the models we've reviewed on the channel have actually allowed us to step down the power with a little switch. That isn't available on this, so be aware of that when you're ordering. The motors on it that are running these props are absolutely tiny. Now, we are going to be looking at 1306 motors later in the next couple of months. I'm trying to get hold of these for other 160, 180 builds, and these are still really expensive. These motors are 1104 4000s, so they're actually DIS motors. So if you search for 1104 4000 kV, you'll find them. You can buy them, but at the moment they're really expensive when compared to something like a 1306. But they do produce a nice amount of lift on this model. If I just show you how heavy this little guy is, or isn't. Now, obviously we haven't got the battery on here, but we've got everything else. Thank you to my wife for lending the kitchen scales. Let me just pop it on. So all up it's 130 grams. Now the battery that I'm actually using here, this is an 850, is about 80 grams, so it's a big chunk of the weight. I'd actually say when you're ordering your battery you really need to be going for an 850 or 1000 milliamp hours maximum. I wouldn't get a battery that's any heavier than the one we've just looked at, just because I found that's gives a reasonable flight experience. It's hovering just over half throttle, so I wouldn't like to add a bigger battery in here, just because I think it would impede the flight characteristics and how it behaves. There are some LEDs under each of the arms, so they do light up, so I think red at the back and green at the front, which is great for orientation when it's above you. And as we said at the beginning, the last thing I'll mention, this is a CC3D. It's a mini version that's in here in the middle. To wire up the model to your radio receiver is pretty straightforward. They've very nicely actually written on each of the connectors the name of the control that it's actually looking at. So you've got throttle, roll, pitch, so you just plug those into the corresponding connections. So here's the diagram. So if you just follow this diagram and you match it up so that you are plugging throttle into throttle, roll into aileron, elevator into pitch, and rudder into yaw, and then the other two, there's like a channel 5, channel 6 and whatever, just plug those into the auxiliary channels on your radio. Those are the ones that will be used to change the mode. If we go back to the desk, however, there is one little drawback. You'll notice that all the cables are black. There's only one cable that has all of the wires on, that's going to provide us with a signal positive +5 volts for our radio receiver and ground, and it's on this one. It's on the channel 6 connector. The problem is you don't know which way that has to go on to the model, so this is the little trick to figure it out. On top on the model itself, up here are two big studs that has the plus and minus voltage from the battery lead. So that V minus is the ground pin. So the way to figure this out is get yourself your ohm meter, and what you need to do is just pop a pin in one of the jaws, stick it in one side or the other. You've got a 50-50 chance of getting this right, and then what you do is power on your ohm meter, and then what you need to do is then touch that V minus pin. Here we go. If it goes down to a short, then you know that that pin you're in is actually the negative one, and that's the one that has to go to the negative connector on your receiver. That's the only thing that I think they could have done a better job here in actually labeling which is the signal and which is the ground on either side of this connector. But if you follow that process, you'll be good, and then you'll be ready to plug it into the PC to calibrate the ESC and set up your radio. Now, don't install your props when you're going to set it up. The trick that I found is I was really struggling to connect to the CC3D. I actually had to apply battery voltage and let the machine boot. Once it was booted, then if I connected the USB cable to the PC, it detected it correctly, automatically installed all of the drivers, and we were away. So if you're not sure about setting up CC3Ds and going through the calibration routine, I'll put a link to the CC3D setup video here, and I'll pop a little link that you can click on using YouTube cards in the top right hand corner. Go and have a look at that. That will take you through it, but do remember that trick. Power it with the flight battery first and then plug it in, and it'll work an awful lot better. Once you've got it set up and calibrated, the other thing I'd recommend then is when you're installing the props, be super careful about how you actually pop these things on. It's really easy to put them on upside down. You can see that they do have printed on the prop the size, and the way it works is that standard CC3D, so that's the layout of the craft, the way it works is that these two should be anti-clockwise, turn like that, and these two are clockwise. So make sure that the leading edge, the higher edge of the blade, is the one that's going around and catching that air. Once you've got the blades on, then you're good to go and have a flight. Never ever power the craft up without the transmitter antenna in here, otherwise you'll blow the FPV electronics. So when you go to do anything with it, even if you're just playing on the bench, if you're going to apply main power, do double check and make sure you've got the antenna on here. Flying is relatively straightforward and pretty easy. It is a very small model, so it's very affected by the wind. There isn't a lot of mass. It does fly nicely. It's a CC3D, and I fly these in a lot of my craft, and I love the way they feel. They're very sensible and they're very easy to manage. Auto level is turned on all the time by default as it's set up as it arrives, so if you wanted to play with that you could, but I found as an FPV ship it's a ton of fun, and we're easily getting kind of 8-9 minute plus flight times out of an 850 class battery. Do make sure the battery though is at least kind of 30-35C so that it'll actually provide the current, because each of those little ESCs on the arms is 10 amps in total. Now each of these guys will not pull anywhere near 10 amps, but you need to be able to make sure that the battery can supply the power without getting into trouble. So what do I think of it? Well, in summary, I do like it. I like the way that it comes as a complete package. It's ready to rock and roll. It's already pre-tuned. All you have to do is put your receiver on, grab yourself a battery, go through the CC3D setup, and you're ready to fly. I would say here though, definitely make sure you get the 137 degree version of the camera. I would upgrade the transmitter aerial. I don't think that's a particularly good one. I don't like the fact it says on the top it's both 5.8 and 2.4 gig. You can't really do that with an antenna, so I would just get rid of it and get yourself something, you know, a Fat Shark or a Quantum or something else and pop them on there instead. In later videos in this playlist, we are going to be looking at mini flight controllers similar to this mini CC3D. We're going to be looking at the 1306 version, the bigger brother of these motors, and also looking at things like smaller 160 and 180 class frames. So for those of you that are interested in actually building something like this yourself, you can actually do that, or if you wanted to, you could actually 3D print yourself a frame. This would fit on most 3D printer beds. But if you're not into all that messing about and you just want something you can order, get in with the minimum amount of effort, get it all set to fly, and then go and have a hoot with it, this is definitely something you should be looking at. So thanks again to Banggood for supplying this for us to play with. The link is in the description to the product, and for those of you that are in the Northern Hemisphere and looking to get your hands on something to play with indoors, have a look at this. Take the time to subscribe to the channel and join the Painless 360 community. The videos that we produce are all on our channel and they're all arranged into easy to use playlists. So if you click on the playlist tab, then you'll be able to see all of the videos that we have collected into individual playlists that make it easier to find videos you're interested in. If you click on any single one of these playlists, then you'll actually be taken to the playlist and you'll be able to see all of the videos laid out one after the other, and either can play them individually or play all. Or if you came and saw the video that you've just watched by accident and you're not a subscriber, then please subscribe. But also, if you look at the top of the description underneath the video that you've just watched, usually if it's part of a playlist, one of the first things in the description will be a link back to the playlist so you can find all the other interesting videos that you might like. Thanks again for watching. Please like, do subscribe, and very happy flying.